All right, well, welcome here and our continuing Meet the Artists series. Some applause for me for Ellis. Anyway, someone that needs absolutely no introduction, especially around here. He's the person that started this whole program, was a mentor to me and all our faculty and students here. And he's going to do a little clinic today and sort of rehearse with the band he's going to be playing with tomorrow night at the Sandbar. And so I'm sure he's going to field some questions. So if you have any questions for him, this is your opportunity to ask the great Ellis Marsalis.
Yeah, well, I usually like to start out by asking them if any of you have any questions. Because if you don't, then I'll have to assume that you already know everything. Because you have no question.
How did you develop your sound and who did you check out?
The sound, how did I develop that?
Yeah, your sound.
Fortunately, when I was young and dumb, I had a good piano teacher, and I paid attention to what she told me and practiced the way that she told me, and didn't let myself fall into or continue bad habits that I had started with. And basically, it's just a matter of continuing to practice correctly.
Ellis, did you have a, and speaking about your sound, you know, it's very distinctive and, were there some piano players whose sound you were trying to get, or did you have like a vision in your ear of how you wanted to sound that was independent of?
Well, neither one of them, really. And listening to piano players, mostly what I would think about had to do with what they were playing, and not so much how, because I didn't really get a chance to hear live very many piano players, and none of the giants. I barely missed hearing Art Taylor. He was on a tour coming into the city and got sick and got off the tour. You know, when the tour arrived, I was looking, but no art. But otherwise than that, I was not that conscious of what other piano players sounded like. It was mostly just listening to what they were doing and trying to emulate that and fit it into what we were doing.
Did you name Wayne after Wayne Kelly? Wayne Marsalis.
Who?
Your son. Did you name him after Wayne Kelly?
My wife did.
Was it from Wayne Kelly? The piano player. Did you name Wayne?
Well, she wanted to name him Wayne Kelly, and I said, well, no. We settled for Wynton Learson. Learson being like her mother's maiden name.
Learson?
Learson.
Huh?
Learson.
Learson, okay.
Yeah.
Ellis, as an educator, you always felt it was important for jazz musicians to study with a classical teacher at some point, or learn some technique, classical technique, and then is that how Wynton got kind of started into the classical realm, or what are your thoughts on that?
Well, it's hard to give a carte blanche answer on that. The way that things are now, the bigger percentage of younger players are emerging from conservatories. Studying with a good piano teacher, when I say a good piano teacher, is somebody who is aware of the art of playing the instrument, which sometimes people might say, study with a classical piano teacher. Well, just because they are the auspices of classical don't mean that they're good as teachers. And if you go back a few years and you listen to Red Garland, he's self-taught. Errol Garner, same thing. You know, he didn't have, and I remember I had a chance to talk to Wes Montgomery, and like Wes Montgomery was totally, he didn't even read music. Now the other members of his family, Buddy and them, did. But I think because of the nature of the way things are today, you need, anybody who wants to play the piano, you need to study with a good piano teacher. When I was on faculty here, quite a few students I would send to piano teachers on this faculty because there were things that they needed in the development of their piano skills. Now, there are places they don't believe that. The whole idea for some people, as soon as you stick the label jazz, it's sort of like anything goes. And it's unfortunate because unless you happen to be like an Errol Garner, you're gonna have a lot of problems if you're thinking in terms of being a career. Anybody in here looking at this as a career?
Everybody raised their
I don't see that many hands.
Yeah. You mean,
Well, what
you mean
do you
teaching
want?
or playing? Teaching or playing, or both?
Huh?
Teaching or playing?
Well, from what I can see right now, it can be kind of difficult to have a career in teaching.
Yeah, you're right.
There's an article in the Wall Street Journal, and I missed it by a day. My son called me and told me about it. It was in yesterday's Wall Street Journal. I tried to get it online, but if you're not a subscriber, they won't let you. And it talks about the charter schools in the city of New Orleans. And like the rest of the country is looking at the charter schools in New Orleans as some form of an experiment, because this city has the largest amount of charter schools in the country. A lot of that has to do with Katrina, but doesn't matter why. And I don't really know a lot about charter schools from the career standpoint of view, at least. You know, I have grandchildren that go to charter school, but the last there's a charter school about 2 blocks from the center. There's a center in the upper Ninth Ward that Harry Connick and my son Branford thought was a good idea to name after me. So consequently, people see the name and they think I own it. But nonetheless, that school just opened on the 19th of August. And 40 of their students are currently studying music at the center, which is a couple of blocks away. So when we met with their CEO, see, they have like a CEO and also like a principal and the faculty. When we met with the CEO, the question that I wanted to find out was that, well, the name of the school is Akili. I wanted to find out, okay, we got 40 students from Akili coming to the center, and they're studying with, depending on what the concentration is, there's at least 3 students, 2 of them were former band directors in the city, in schools, good band directors. Now, how is it going to look from your end, from their end? So, she wasn't really sure. Eventually, she said that there was a guy who was hired named Mike, and he said that he had gone to Noka. All of you know what that is? Noka?
Mm-hmm.
He had gone to Noka and he was a drummer. Well, I asked at least 2 people at Noka. Well, for one thing, I asked my son Jason, who had been teaching drums at Noka for years. He never heard of it. And I asked Mike Reiner, who went to school here. He's teaching at Noka. He said he'd never heard of it. So I think they had a meeting at the center with him, but I wasn't able to attend it. Now, the reason why I'm going through all of this is because if you are really looking into being a teacher, you need to do a considerable amount of investigation. See, universities are usually the last institutions to figure out anything. When I was an undergraduate, everything was laid out. You had X amount of hours you took. Once you completed them, you did student teaching in a school where, well, they only hired one music teacher, instrumental, and one music teacher, vocal. So if you were instrumental, then you did your practice work under an instrumental teacher. You know, I was lucky. I did my practice work under a woman named Yvonne Bush, who was fantastic. Now, that's why I said, I have no idea what they do now. And those of you who may want to become teachers, especially, even if it's elementary school, I suggest that you go and talk to some counselor here and see what direction you're going in terms of what is expected once you get out, and then try to get a job at one of those places. Recently, they had been hiring Teach for America, and the deal was those who had finished from university and had this truckload of debt, if Teach for America would hire you and give you about 6 months of training for classroom, and if you agree to 2 years, they'd wipe away the debt. So it was like a revolving door. 2 years later, see you, I'm out of here. Now, the last that I heard was that they upped it to 5 years of being there. So anyway, I'm totally on the outside of that. Because even though, like I mentioned, I have some grandchildren, they don't know what's going on. So I can't find out anything from them. But any of you really looking at being teachers?
You know, I think the point being, you know, I can't speak for everybody, but, you know, speaking for myself, I never intended to be a teacher.
Neither did I.
And neither did you. So you know, and we want, you know, it was more of a necessity. But I think the point is that even though, you know, you can be a really developed artist and perform and do concerts and things like that, I don't know any artist that doesn't do some teaching. I mean, can you think of anybody that only concertizes as a jazz musician, or, you know, and doesn't do clinics or doesn't do some type of educational outreach? I mean, everybody has to. So it's another skill that I think that all musicians have to have, that you can get up in front of an audience and speak about music or whatever, and I think that's, everybody needs to realize that you're probably not going to make a living only playing music, that you're going to have to have a lot of other skills available to you. So that's what I'm thinking,
Well, I don't know if Cecil Taylor does.
Yeah, well, that's what I mean, there's certain,
And I think he makes a very good living.
yeah. Well, that's what I mean, but, what's the percentage of people who can actually do that? It's pretty small.
And there's a good chance that Keith Jarrett doesn't.
Yeah,
And somebody told me Charles Lawrence lives in the hills and only comes down
Right.
when he's gonna play a concert.
yeah. But you're talking about the 1%. Talking about the 99%.
0.001%.
It's like 0.01.
You're 0.01%.
Now, you see, here's the thing. I brought up the whole idea of teaching in charter school because I do think, now, well, before I say that, this is a very subjective opinion. I think this, our whole nation is in trouble. And without getting on a political stump, to cut to the chase, and the essence of that is that, how many of you have heard of STEM, the term? All right, there are departments of education in schools which emphasize what they call STEM, science, technology, engineering, and math. Now, a friend of mine who is currently residing in Huntsville, Alabama, is trying to establish some aspect of jazz in Huntsville. And we email back and forth, and I've been up there and I've played once. But it's essentially what used to be not the greatest thing in the world, but it was something that was manifested on a current basis, was that there used to be a lot of nightclubs. Now, the nightclubs I'm talking about were primarily nightclubs where if you were sort of okay, especially in the rhythm and blues era, you could get a job, make a couple of dollars, and then think about music and, practice. Expenses were different. Like, I could go to a job when I was a teenager for 7 cents, 7 pennies, and get a transfer. I don't think you can do that today. But essentially, there was no such thing as a jazz studies program in them days at all. Whether that was good, bad, or whatever, it doesn't even matter. It just wasn't. Now, I like the thought and the idea of jazz studies program, but I do think that the information that is coming through such those types of programs should be sufficient enough for you to develop a marketable skill. Now, that is a very important couple of words, a marketable skill. I had a chance to talk with an outgoing music chairman at Louisiana State University in Baton Rouge. And well, I don't know how many of you even bother with athletics and football and all of that, but LSU is what is called an SEC school, Southeastern Conference. And by the fall of next year, SEC is going to have their own television network. Now, that's a lot of money. When I talked to this gentleman, I asked him about what is called the Golden Band from Tigerland. That's that big marching band that they had at LSU. And I said, well, how many people in the band are like music majors? He said, maybe 20%. Maybe. Now, just using those figures, 80% are not. And I think I Googled it just to find out what I could. If you make it into that band, you could get a $1,000 scholarship. Now, I'm not sure what what the tuition is, but $1,000 is not too bad in a state school. Like when I first came here, it was $500, and we were the poor folks. Now, my point is this: if you're going to stay with music, there's one or two things that you can do. One, you can be serious enough about music, and I deliberately avoid encloaking it by saying jazz. If you're going to be serious enough about music, then you need to develop skills on your chosen instrument, because that's going to make the difference. Like the reason there is a teacher like Professor Mazakowski is because that's what he did. He developed skills on that instrument. So when it was an opportunity to find out, hey man, would you like to teach? We were able to get him because first of all, he wanted to teach. And he didn't really have all of those alphabets behind his name. You know, the MAs and PhDs and whatever.
Never even formulated.
Some, if not all, universities as of now are trying to make the PhD or DMA a requirement for teaching at the university. Now, in visual arts, a terminal degree in fine arts is MFA. Now, jazz studies, as we know it, is not going to be exempt from that. So, if you do, like I said, if you do really think that you may want to teach in an institution, that's right, I should qualify that. In an institution, because Steve was teaching even before he came here. You need to investigate what's going on in other places for terminal degrees, if that's the route that you're going to take.
It's gotten a lot more competitive too, because I know I write a lot of letters of recommendation for guys that are just really outstanding players and also have all the credentials, and it's getting more difficult for people to find teaching positions.
Well, it's the only reason why it wasn't competitive earlier was because they didn't have no jazz studies program.
Right.
I had a chance to read a paper at the MLA, Modern Language Association. And up until that time, I had no idea how much competition was involved in getting a university job in something other than if you're like a genius scientist or anything like that. Modern language, people who majored in Greek mythology, in English, and French, all of these kinds of courses. And it was my last year at Virginia Commonwealth when I did this. And I was inundated with all kinds of people who was looking to find out about Virginia Commonwealth and what the city was like, what it was like, because they knew I was leaving, but I don't know how many of them were interested in music. But the point is, when it comes down to it, the one thing that is most necessary is that you have to develop marketable skills. I'll tell you an interesting story. My son Branford told me this. He was doing adjunct teaching at Michigan State with a saxophone player who was on faculty. And Michigan State had a classical saxophone department. And one of the saxophone students, decided that he would take a jazz course because he didn't really know anything about jazz at all. So he came up and was teaching, was registered for the course, and Branford said they had him to work on Sweet Georgia Brown and do a transcription of a saxophonist playing Sweet Georgia Brown. So he did, and he graduated and went to look for a job at different institutions. And he among many other saxophonists, was auditioning for the position. And the professor who was auditioning asked all of the saxophone, the jazz saxophone teachers, students, any of you know anything about jazz? So he said, well, I know a little. And so he played what he knew of Sweet Georgia Brown that he learned at Michigan State and got the job. Now, I don't think that happens a lot. You know? Because in some ways, that's more like luck than anything else. But I'm more than sure that as time goes on, especially in you people's lives, they're going to raise the bar in terms of teaching at a university.
Well, in terms of your teachers, when you were growing up, did you have kind of mentor figures that stuck with you, or you stuck with for a long time, that they saw your growth, or they saw more than just like a one-time relationship? It was like more of a long-term.
What, did I have a
Did you have
mentor?
long-term teachers, yeah, or a mentor? Or
Yeah. Him. We were both at Dillon University. I came in as a freshman, and he had been there he was going into his third year. I knew Harold before that, but I was seeing him like every day, and he was definitely a mentor. Now, my first piano teacher, second piano teacher, was a great teacher as well as being a fantastic classical performer. But she didn't have any biases about jazz, which is a lot of other teachers did. And she was the one who helped me to understand simple things like sit up correct at the piano, hold your hands in the right position, now play. You know, things like that. You see? But for the most part, that's why I say, like, you know, you people are coming up at a time for which, as far as teaching and universities, high schools and all of that, it's kind of foreign to me. I don't really know. But I don't care what the situation is, where it's going. You cannot do anything without a marketable skill. That will serve you regardless.
I think we have a band now, right?
Do we have a group?
Yeah, so you guys get set up and then they can do a little playing? Maybe,
It is important to learn classical and jazz. It's important to learn classical and jazz.
Classical.
I think it's important to learn that too. Classical.
I think what people refer to as classical music, if you're utilizing classical techniques, you know, that's not quite the same as, say, learning classical music. I got an interview at home that Keith Jarrett did. And Keith Jarrett started out as a classical pianist. And he made a comment in the interview. And he said, at which he said that he had decided to go back to Bach. Now, I'm not sure which one. It could have been the Goldberg Variation. It could have been the WTC, the Well-Tempered Clavier. I don't know, because Bach wrote so much music. And when he went to the next job, Dijonette said, man, I don't know what you've been doing, but keep doing it. So, what it takes to deal with what we call classical music. See, there's only about 3 instruments that really have a lot of career potentiality. The piano, there's all kinds of music written for piano. The violin, same thing. Cello. Now, there are concertos written for other instruments, but not as prolific as the piano, the violin, and the cello. So if you happen to be a pianist and you try to get into a major institution, into a major studio, well, you are looking at learning a tremendous amount of concerto literature for the simple reason that the piano teacher with a major studio and a major institution, their promotion and tenure is based on how many students that they can turn out that is going in that direction. Now, if you are not going in that direction, you know, remind me of one of my grandsons was playing basketball at University of Vermont Division I school, but he quit the team. And when I saw him, I asked him, I said, why'd you quit? He said, man, I didn't have time to spend 6 hours a day on a basketball court. Mm-hmm. Well, basically, when people start talking about classical music, we're talking 6, 7, 8 hours a day on that music.
But it's good to play both, right?
Huh?
It's good to play both.
Well, it depends on what you mean by that. Like if you're really interested in jazz, I think you take whatever is offered in what's called classical music, the technique parts, and learn to play the instrument. But you still have to concentrate on jazz. a lot.
What do you think about jazz as far as it has come today? Jazz today. What do you think about jazz today?
About what?
Jazz today, modern jazz. Do you like
What do you mean?
Like,
In terms of,
the way the music has changed.
oh, I don't think the music's changed at all. I think there are people who come into music under the rubric of jazz and see, here's what you got to one think about. I remember a good friend of mine, the late Alvin Baptiste, whenever Alvin would do workshops and talk to students, he would always tell them, he said, look, do not let the disc jockey be your music librarian. Because for the most part, including the word jazz, there's all kinds of terms out there that are used in marketing that get stuck onto whatever somebody's doing. And if you have to find a name for something, then you're trying to market it in a certain direction. So I don't know. To me, the music is basically all the same, because they have people like sometimes they'll say so-and-so plays out, whatever that means, and they've always had people who did that.
I mean, before y'all play something, and you know, he's no longer with us, but we have a lot of drummers here, and we teach a lot about James Black's music here. It's probably one of the only institutions I can think of in the country that you know, teaches his music and the importance of him as a figure in New Orleans jazz. And you played with him for many years. Can you just speak about James and just like, you know, his abilities as a composer and a musician, you know, personality? He was kind of a controversial
Well,
guy.
I'm going into the personality.
All right.
Stay away from that. No, James Black was unique. I remember a comment that this gentleman, that Harold Baptiste said about James. James was playing drums in a group I had, and then with other people. And Harold said, well, man, I just thought that drums was just one more thing James could do. Because he could play guitar. He was playing principal trumpet in the concert band at Southern University. He could write music. He had sufficient piano skills to help him with his compositions. You know, he would play paradiddles for 45 minutes straight, just, you know, double strokes. He was very conscious of developing himself as a total musician, going in the direction that he was going in. I think in some ways, he was his own worst enemy, but that didn't take away from what he was able to do in the time that he was here.
Wasn't he one of the first person in New Orleans to really introduce odd time signature playing? I mean, were you doing that before James? You know, playing in 5/4, 7/4.
No.
James kind of introduced that.
James we were playing at the Playboy Club, and James came in with the Magnolia Triangle. And we were doing 6 nights a week. And I don't know how long, man, I ran from that tune.
Who was in that band? That was you, James, and
And Marshall Smith,
Marshall Smith.
you know, I don't know how long. You know, he said, man, when we gonna play my song? I said, oh, I'm working on it. And eventually, it got to a point where I had no more excuses. So I started playing, And it was the part that was most interesting. James had the bass line that he had put in the song, and he had Marshall to play the bass line throughout the solo. So after we played it at the Playboy Club a couple of times, I told Marshall, I said, look, man, I said, don't play that bass line. Just do time, straight up. You know, James said, no, man, no, don't do it. I said, look, let's just do the time straight up like it was. And I think it was from that point on that he understood that we could do that, you see, and actually play with respect to the meter. Because a lot of people had heard Dave Brubeck's Take 5, which wasn't 5. It was a measure 3 and a measure 2. And not only that, there was a drum solo. Joe Morello played the solo. And James used to say, in describing like music, he used to say, all music is in one.
Yeah, right. He used to tell me that too.
Yeah. He said, all music is in one. Now, there's a further explanation for that. But when we started playing that tune, Magnolia Triangle, I understood that. Because the whole concept of thinking of music in terms all of it being in one has to do with wherever the pulse is and not how you break it up. You know, he had a concept that he called the gravity ball concept with his drum, for drum set. He imagined that in front of him was a ball suspended in midair by what he played with some degree of consistency. So that meant that there had to be a constant flow of rhythmic approaches to what he was doing to keep that invisible ball suspended in the air. You know, I tried to get him to write a book, but, well, you know, that's another thing.
Well, you know, he's become a legendary figure now. I mean, you know, most drummers, all the drummers, I'm sure, know who James Black is. I mean, if you're from New Orleans and you're a drummer now, you should know about his history. But,
Any other questions?
Yes, yeah, I wanted to know if you could talk to us a little bit about composition, like how you approach writing your music and how you think of it, or any concepts you have that you might want to share with us.
When I started out trying to write music, write things down, it was basically what we used to call writing tunes, which was AABA, or either blues. And if it was blues, then it was just a head. As I got more confident in writing music down, I started to write some things which was a little more challenging. I was working in a club called Lou and Charlie's, and when I wrote Nostalgic Impressions, which was a challenge to me to write that. But for the most part, I never did really develop a compositional attitude, so to speak. I didn't really care that much about writing music. When I was in graduate school at Loyola, I took a course in composition from a lady. I never got to hear any of her work, but she was helping me with composition. And there are parts of composition, if you're going to go in the direction of an orchestra, that you have to understand. It helps if you listen to composed works by composers. The composers that I was always enamored of was French composers. You know, Debussy, Ravel, Honegger, Fauré, you know. I eventually developed a very healthy respect for Beethoven, and I began to realize that something that I think he did to all of the rest of those people who would be composers, you know, because not, you know, I wasn't born at that time, but I could just about imagine what it must have been like to be functioning in Austria at that time and have to listen to some music that Beethoven finished.
Yeah.
You see, like, you ever heard Beethoven's Fifth Symphony?
Yeah.
Have you ever known any composer to start a piece on the and of one? Other than Beethoven. And he was never known as one with any kind of great melodies. Well, you know, probably the best one was the ninth, the Ode to Joy. But otherwise than that, it's a great study because of a lot of stuff he did, especially with the quartets. But basically, like I said, I never really bent towards composing music. There's a couple of things that I've done. And I've done some arranging. I did some Ellington for orchestra. But for the most part, I don't know why that is. You know, I don't have the patience or whatever. But most of us also would write or compose music for whatever instrumentation that was available to play that music. So that would make a difference.
You taught, you were one of the early teachers in the New Orleans Center for Creative Arts, and had such an influence on some of the great young players that we all know today. Your colleague at the time, Dr. Bert Brough. Talk a little bit about Bert Brough, because he's somebody I studied with, and he was like, I know you guys were kind of like a team over there,
You know what he's doing now?
What's he doing?
He left music, and he went to LSU and he got a PhD in physics. Just to do it, not for no anything else.
I thought he was very ill, but I mean, is this recent?
He was ill.
Really?
And I talked to him on the phone.
Recently?
Yeah, within the last year.
Oh.
Because Harry was trying to get in touch with him, so I got a telephone number and I talked to him.
Yeah,
that's what he did, man.
Yeah. Wow. Are you serious?
Anyway, the person that Steve is talking about, Dr. Bert Brough. There were three of us on the faculty at the early NOCA uptown. Lorraine Alfaro, who was vocal, Bert Brough, who was classical, if you will, and me. And Bert Brough was a great teacher. in every sense of the word. I mean, music at that time was his chosen direction. But it wouldn't have mattered. He was just a great teacher. Because I know he told me, like sometimes what he would do when he was studying composition, the teacher would give them an assignment to write and like sort of orchestrate on a smaller scale a piece, just a theme. And like Bert would have organized and arranged the theme in the style of 4 different composers, just to make the teacher mad. Because he couldn't do that. The great thing about that faculty, the 3 of us, was all 3 of us had a healthy respect for music in general. So consequently, we would have recital hour once a week. Anybody that was ready, you've been studying and you had a piece, everybody would come in that big room downstairs and perform that. And some of the vocal students, for example, all of the vocal students that were studying with Lorraine Alfaro was doing primarily the operatic literature. And she was so good at what she did. Like all of the students came in talking about vocal cords. When she'd ask about, well, what is your instrument? The vocal cord. Well, first of all, it's not chords, it's vocal folds. And as far as the singing is concerned, your entire body is your instrument. There were a lot of things that I learned just from being around her in relationship to vocalization, even though I never tried to teach anybody that. But there was an objectivity about Bert Bro that worked in the students' favor. For example, he would start at the beginning of the year with the theory lessons. And each test that he gave, the theory, you collect that. And at the end of that year, when we would have our end of the year session wrapping up, he said, man, look what I got. He said, I got every one of those tests. From all of those tests that the students took, he said, now that's done, and we don't have to do that no more. So the following year would come, and some new students would come in. And after the new students came in our first meeting, Bert had all of those test papers, and he said, man, it don't work, none of it. Now, the reason that it didn't work was because, number one, it was a crop of new students. Not only new students, but with new experiences among them. So whatever test you gave to students last year, the people who were coming in this year was not like a herd of cows. They were all different students. And there were times when we would make the first 2 weeks in the school nothing but studying intervals so that they could hear intervals. Now, we were fortunate at the school that we were teaching, well, we could do that. Whatever it was we thought and we knew was necessary to teach the students, we could do it. We were not slaves to somebody's curriculum that somebody wrote from somewhere else. And invariably, Bert did not have the kind of ego that would look at the incoming students and say, oh man, they're a bunch of dummies. How come y'all can't get this? All our students last year got this, and you don't get it. You know, he would never do that. I don't know if any of you ever had any teachers like that. You know, he didn't know a lot about jazz, but he understood, and so did Lorraine Alfaro, like some of our students, all of the students on that tried that would perform, there were things that they had to know. And for example, one of the students in the jazz program might play My Funny Valentine. Now, when you finish with that, you have to stand there and be subjected to whatever it is that the students, faculty, or whatever, questioned you about what you just got through playing. So usually, if one of my students played, like, My Funny Valentine, when he finished, he'd look at me. And Lorraine Alfaro would come out the blue and say, who wrote that song? Where did it come from? Was it in a movie? If it was, what was the name of that movie? Who was the person who sang that song in the movie? So the music students never knew from which angle they would be attacked in terms of what they were supposed to know. And it really made for not only interesting, but for a whole learning process in terms of teaching. Every year, after we finally graduated people, quite a few students went to major conservatories. About the first week of December, students would come back home from the school. And we would gather all of the current students that was at NOCA into the room. And as the students, the graduated students would come in, we would say, okay, you tell us what we didn't teach based upon what you found out when you got in that conservatory. And one of the results of that was actually turning sight singing and ear training into a class, not as an appendage to theory, which is what most of the schools do. And yours truly drew that assignment to teach sight singing and ear training. And but that was the kind of institution that NOCA was during the time that I was teaching it.
Yeah, should
So
we play a little bit? You want to play a tune?
Well, are there any questions? Okay,
Can I
let's
ask you?
try to play something.
She's got one quick one.
You travel a lot to different countries, and especially when you travel to Asian. And do you have any suggestion or anything feeling about the education about jazz in Asian, or do you have any good suggestion? Like, how can
You
we?
mean jazz in Asia?
Yes.
Jazz education
Jazz education
in Asia?
Mhm.
I remember once at NOCA we hosted administrator, I think he was from China. The superintendent of the Orleans Parish School Board at that time had been a part of a group that went to China. And like a lot of Americans do, you know, he met the minister of education in China while he was there. So when he left, he says, well, look, if you're ever in New Orleans, look me up. he came and looked him up.
Okay.
Yeah, you know. So that whole day, you know, like we spent, you know, just having students play and talk to him. And one of the things that he told us, because Bert asked him about that, he said, well, what the music situation like in China? He said, man, we got to do the same thing. There ain't no respect for it. We got to try to hustle out some money. And, you know, say, wow, the world over is the same thing.
Yeah, it's the same.
But a more direct answer in terms of what you were asking, where are you from?
Taiwan.
Taiwan.
Okay. There's a jazz festival in Taiwan. I played that festival last year. And the politicians there seem to be very supportive of jazz. So I wasn't there long enough to be analytical about what's going on, except that, you know, the jazz festival was one which was hosted by and supported by people in positions of authority. So what is your instrument?
Saxophone.
Saxophone? Well, learn as much as you can about it, because there seems to be an active situation in Taiwan. Just don't get into the politics.
All right. Well, you want to maybe rehearse a tune with?
It'd be a good idea.
You know, of course, tomorrow night Ellis is going to start off the Jazz to Sandbar series. You know, and Victor's combo is going to be accompanying him. So this is the first time they ever played together. So we'll just be flies on the wall.
Yeah, I played at Urban.
Oh yeah. Good tone. Yeah. Sorry, I found the flash drive here.
Whatever we do, let's make this easy. Serious. Very good. Let's make
Where?
The way you wear your hat, the way you sip your tea, the memories of all that. Oh no, they can't take that away from me. The way your smile just beams, the way you sing off key, and you haunt my dreams. No, 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 they can't take that away from me. We may never, never meet again on the bumpy road to life. I'll always, always keep the
You be on drums? Billy's down.
Right.
You ready, baby? Come over.
Oh.
What?
I can,
What? See?
yeah.
Don't worry. See.
You want to play another one, or you want to play one by yourself, a trio?
Well, what are we gonna play tomorrow?
We have a little more older tune. We want to get our rollers back up. Yeah, yeah. No, for sure.
Ellis, do you have any suggestions to the
Yeah, please critique.
musicians?
The long wait.
Well, being a part of this, there's not as much as I could say if I was not in the group.
Yeah.
But, and then there's a lot that you guys are doing that I don't know. Probably a lot that you're doing that I do. So, as it stands now, just keep doing.
You do? Okay, well, that's appreciated. We're gonna be summertime tomorrow too, indeed. We're gonna be summertime, indeed. So that's how everyone can sing it. Yeah.
You say that?
I'm living deep. So hush, little baby, don't you cry. One of these mornings, you're gonna rise up, see. Then spread your wings and take to the sky. But until the morning, Daddy and Mommy Daddy and Mommy Daddy and Mommy Bye.